What's up, guys? Welcome to part 6 of the Every Time I Die review series. This time we are looking at X-Lives. So in the last part with New Junk Aesthetic, I talked about my kind of mixed feelings about that album, about how I really enjoyed the artwork. I really felt like some of the songs could have been fantastic, but the guitars kind of were lacking on there. It's mostly due to the production. They just didn't feel as much, as punchy as they had in the past. Chaotic was kind of toned down a little bit on that album. It made way for some more soothing, soulful vocal work on there as well. It was a little bit different than things that we'd gotten in the past, particularly my favorite album, which is The Big Dirty. And I was kind of anticipating the next album that would come from this band. I talked about how that was the New Junk Aesthetic came out during my musical awakening, as I like to call it. So X-Lives was actually the first album from Every Time I Die that I was actively anticipating. Usually I found out about an album by finding out that there was a single released, or seeing the music video on Fuse or something like that. That's generally how I discovered new music. This was the first time that I had sat down and realized how much I really liked Every Time I Die. So I was kind of actively following them everywhere I could to figure out when this album was going to drop, when we were going to get a new song, what was going on with that. And then the first song from this album came out, and it was called Underwater Bimbos from Outer Space. And the opening line, right from that beginning line, which is just, I want to be dead with my friends. I knew we were back to what we had heard in the past from this band. It was chaotic, it was heavy, it was off the wall, it was sarcastic, it was everything I would want from Every Time I Die and everything that I could expect from the band, and then more, just in this one song. And it really had me just jonesing for more from this band. I mean, that song in particular is really what just sold me on it. I was kind of a little weary about New Junk Aesthetic, because I was wondering if this was kind of going to be a new direction for the band, where they kind of going to tone things down a little bit. Were they going to bring in just more smooth vocals, soulful vocals, whatever you want to call them, where the guitars are going to be just not quite as heavy as they had been in the past. And this put all my anxieties or anything just out of the way. That one song that they came out with, and then the album dropped, and I mean, I listened to that on repeat because it was just so good. There's so much on this album. There's more experimentation from the band. There's more mix. They bring back a lot of their old style, as far as even going back to their first two albums, and just bringing back that absolute off the wall chaotic sound that they had really had. But then it's always it's juxtaposed against those smooth, soulful vocals that Keith Buckley has been working on, which is just absolutely fantastic on this album. It really comes together. Particularly the song I Suck Blood is a perfect example of that. The guitar work is just crazy. The drumming is just all over the place on that song, and yet you do get these moments where things just kind of open up, and you get Keith Buckley with the soulful lines, and his just smooth vocals have improved so much over the period of time when they've been releasing these albums. You get these weird songs on here like Parting Is Such Sweet Sorrow, which begins with like a fiddle, and then it just opens up to blast beats, and you get these dark, grim lines like 15 years has been long enough, put the child in an unmarked grave, and burn the black book page by page. And that's absolutely fantastic, because that's exactly what I want from the band. I want those dark, grim imagery. I mean, this is another album, like I described The Big Dirty as being a dirty album. It made me feel like I wanted to take a shower afterwards. And X-Lives kind of does the same thing. When I listen to this album, it really kind of gives me just the imagery of film noir. I get these really kind of dark contrasts and shadows. I mean, that's just what goes on in my head as far as how I visualize this album. And that's something I really didn't get from New Junk Aesthetic, but definitely got from The Big Dirty. And that's what I really like about X-Lives. It feels like a continuation of the sound and style that they went with on The Big Dirty, and yet it also pushes them further, which is something I like. There's a new drummer on this album, which they just nicknamed Legs, and he's absolutely just, like I said, off the wall on this whole album. He's all over the place. Songs like Holy Book of Dilemma, just the beginning of that track, his guitar work is, his drumming is just brilliant on that track, and that song in general is another just very dark song as well. Then you have these songs like Indian Giver, for instance, which are very kind of more atmospheric and moody, and it's not really something that we've gotten from them, at least not outright. Some songs may have felt like that accidentally, but this feels like it was on purpose to feel that way, and I really get that enjoyment from that. It really does kind of put you in a mood. Like I said, it creates these images, at least in my mind, of, you know, a dark, dusty, old Route 66 kind of highway, somebody just drinking in a bar somewhere, you know, expressing regrets and lamenting over the past, things like that. And that's something that really draws me to this album, that I really kind of enjoy about it as well. You know, like I said, the lines in here, there's some just fantastically dark lines, like on Drag King, the ending of that, what does he have that I don't except you, which is fantastic. There's, again, that song, Don't Stop to Think, just end all good things while you can, just about how eventually everything's kind of going to go bad. If you're in love with somebody, it's eventually going to go wrong somehow. And you really get a sense of, again, where Keith Buckley is on this album and his mindset that he came from writing this. It's a very, very dark place, which I feel like also is why The Big Dirty came about that way as well. You really get these fears and anxieties and everything that he's going through, and it comes through in the music with these lines, with these just vivid imagery that they create in your head. And it's something I've always loved about Every Time I Die, and I think this album really exemplifies that. And you know, it corrects everything that I kind of wasn't too happy with on New Junk Aesthetic. And you know, the X-Lives really is kind of what I feel like was a return to norm for the band, and yet pushing themselves in an entirely new direction as well. Thank you for watching part 6 of the Every Time I Die review series. Next time we're going to be taking a look at 2014's From Parts Unknown.